Tonight, hundreds gather for a rally in Toronto in support of Ukraine as fears grow over the possibility of a Russian invasion.
I'm brought to tears, actually, thinking that I'm saying goodbye to my loved ones.
Members of the GTA's Ukrainian-Canadian community say they fear for their loved ones in Ukraine as the country's conflict with Russia deepens. Plus,
has been a lot of waiting to do this. We are very excited.
Air Canada says it is en route to recovery, announcing it will be relaunching flights to dozens of destinations in the coming months. And
clear that she was targeted for her Jewish background.
Students at a Toronto middle school giving a teacher a Nazi salute. It's the latest in a string of disturbing anti-Semitic incidents at TDSV schools that has many concerned. Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. We begin with tensions in Ukraine. The head of NATO says Russian President Vladimir Putin appears ready to strike after surrounding three sides of the country with a massive military buildup. Now this as the West steps up sanctions against Russia following Putin's move to recognize the independence of two separatist territories in eastern Ukraine. CBC's Moscow correspondent Briar Stewart has the latest.
I'm in the community of Pokrovskaya in southwest Russia near Ukraine's border, and this is a town that's seeing firsthand the military buildup. In fact, just behind me in the distance, you can see military vehicles being loaded onto trains, and there's a lot of residents passing by, very curious about what's going on. There are a lot of soldiers walking down the sidewalk, picking up food and other things, and a lot of people curious. Now, our team here has spoken with residents. They say they don't want to be at war with Ukraine, but they are supportive of what President Vladimir Putin is doing. The Kremlin today would not confirm whether Russia has sent troops over the border into Donetsk and Luhansk, but there are reports that they are on the ground there now, and the conflict is still continuing. Now, there's a big question about what it will mean to have Russia recognize Donetsk and Luhansk as independent, and whether it's going to erupt into a larger war in eastern Ukraine, and there's a very real fear that it could lead to an invasion of the entire country. Briar Stewart, CBC News, near the Russia-Ukraine border.
Canada announcing today it is joining other countries in imposing economic sanctions against Russia, adding it will deploy hundreds more troops to nearby Latvia.
Make no mistake, this is a further invasion of a sovereign state, and it is completely unacceptable.
Among the sanctions, Canadians will be banned from purchasing Russia's sovereign debt or having any business in the two parts of eastern Ukraine Russia has declared as independent states. The Russian MPs who voted to recognize them as republics also face personal financial sanctions. Here in Toronto, a rally took place this evening at the Ukrainian consulate. Members of the GTA's Ukrainian-Canadian community calling on the Canadian government to do more to support Ukraine as fears grow over a possible Russian invasion. Chris Glover has more.
Toronto's Ukrainian community is standing in solidarity with its home country. Nadia Garaluk's family consists of doctors and pharmacists who she says will be called to the front line if Russia's so-called peacekeepers in eastern Ukraine start to attack.
I am not only concerned, I'm brought to tears, actually, thinking that I'm saying goodbye to my loved ones.
My family is there, and I want to stay with them. So I feel a bit bad because I came here. It sounds like a bit of a betrayal.
University professor Alexander Romanko had to come back to Toronto for work. Yesterday, his girlfriend Tamara left Kiev, took him to the airport, and drove straight to her parents' place in western Ukraine while she waits on a Canadian visa. Romanko's parents remain in an eastern Ukrainian city, roughly 40 kilometers from the Russian border.
We certainly understand that, other countries can help us, both military and economically, but it's our job to really stand against Putin because nobody will do it for us. And in my opinion, economic development is what we need.
Anxiety is growing after Russian President Vladimir Putin's decree to formally recognize two breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine. In 2014, when Putin annexed Crimea, hundreds of Torontonians marched through the streets in solidarity with Ukraine. Now that support is rising again.
This could be a huge catastrophe, more than Europe has seen any time since World War II. And it would cause immense catastrophes economically, socially, personally for people. So we're trying to raise funds immediately to help the people who are displaced.
A Canadian GoFundMe page has raised more than $140,000 in humanitarian assistance. And a sticker campaign in Mississauga has sold more than $25,000. Proceeds will go to a Canadian charity that's helped children and veterans in Ukraine since the 90s. I reached out to Premier Doug Ford's office today to ask what Ontario was doing to support the people of Ukraine. And tonight his office is saying that they are still speaking with local community members, and you can expect an announcement on that front very soon. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
To Ottawa now, where Tamara Leach, a major organizer of the so-called Freedom Convoy, was denied bail today. Now this as residents of the city try to get back to a normal life after weeks of disruption. Rafi Bujikanian has the latest.
This isn't quite the visit to the national capital Peter McStravick's family was planning.
I was hoping to be able to bring my sons down to show them the Parliament buildings, but as you know, the whole area is still locked down.
Police have not committed to a firm date for reopening.
It was a mess. They had to clean it up, and it's only temporary.
If the protesters want to kick things up a notch, then the police will be there to respond accordingly.
We're live.
As recently as today, protesters still camped out on private property in Ottawa's vicinity.
We will not quit no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says. We are here till the end, all right? So we get our freedom won back for all Canadians, coast to coast.
This as key organizer Tamara Leach, arrested last week on mischief charges, was denied bail, in part on grounds the judge was not convinced she would not restart protesting. While there is no decision yet on another, Pat King, even as the Crown made a similar argument. Still, police have returned a little bit of the city centre back to normal. Spark Street here is reopened to pedestrians for the first time after it was shut down during the big crackdown last weekend. Rafi Bujikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Ontario's legislature has unanimously passed a motion authorizing the Speaker to bar independent MPP Randy Hillier from participating in the chamber. A motion moved by Government House Leader Paul Calandra says the House expresses its disapproval of Hillier's continued disreputable conduct. It calls on him to apologize for what Calandra calls racist and discriminatory statements about Federal Transport Minister Omar Alghabra, and for social media posts that Calandra says insinuated a call to violence. Hillier has frequently posted COVID-19 misinformation. He also attended the Ottawa occupation by anti-vaccine mandate protesters. Now, all that comes on the first day of the final session of the legislature before the provincial election. The government was hammered on all sides today for what some MPPs called a lack of action during the Ottawa blockade. But Solicitor General Sylvia Jones says it's not the government's job to direct resources given to police.
We did what we needed to do. We gave the police services the resources they needed through the emergency measures.
Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford announcing license plate stickers are being scrapped altogether for passenger vehicles, light-duty trucks, motorcycles, and mopeds in Ontario. This means no more fees for license plate renewals. Police in Peel and Toronto are investigating after the offices of both an MP and MPP were damaged in the past several days. The first incident happened Saturday at the office of Dolly Begum, the MPP for Scarborough Southwest. Police say rocks were thrown, shattering the window of the building located near Kingston Road and McCowan. They say the vandal didn't manage to get inside. And this morning, just before 4:30, a fire broke out at the office of Liberal MP Peter Fonseca in Mississauga. Fire crews attended the scene near Burnhamthorpe Road and Tompkin and extinguished the fire, which has been deemed suspicious. And both incidents are now under investigation. Well, with all the rainfall today, officials in Brampton have been keeping a close eye on the Credit River. Flooding in one neighborhood last week already forced dozens of homes to be evacuated. Some residents still haven't returned. Greg Ross has the latest.
For 6 days now, crews in Brampton have been using excavators to break up and clear away massive chunks of ice that have been clogging the Credit River near Churchville Road. Finally, today, that hard work seems to be paying off.
We're hoping really to get the river flowing in its natural direction that it normally does flow. Again, we can see some water movement, which is really good. The park that I'm standing on the edge of, we've seen the water drop about 12 inches throughout the day today, which is great news.
But heavy amounts of rain expected overnight could set progress back. The city is closely monitoring the situation.
Obviously, we're worried about rain flow this evening and what the warmer weather means for snow melting and ice melting. But now that we've got the river flowing in the right direction, unless it's an unusual amount of rain, we should be okay to be able to get through this.
Flooding caused by this ice jam affected 100 nearby homes. 50 of them were evacuated last week. 6 homes that sustained the bulk of the damage remain evacuated.
There's going to be a legacy of devastation here. We have 100 homes that have been affected by this, numerous homes that are extremely damaged.
And now the mayor is calling on the province to step in and help.
On Thursday, we're going to have provincial officials in to see if we qualify for the provincial disaster assistance for the residents and for the city.
As for the 6 homes that remain evacuated, the owners were allowed back in today just to assess the damage, but they haven't been permitted to stay. And because of the extent of that damage, they could be out for quite some time. Greg Ross, CBC News, Brampton.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, a mild and wet one out there today definitely hasn't been easy for areas dealing with flooding concerns.
Yeah, so big concerns when you add more rain to that. But it's not only that, as we know, it's been the frozen ground and then the rain on top of that, plus some of the melting that we've had and the ice jam. So many things going on. Plus, for Eastern Ontario, prolonged period earlier as we're looking at freezing rain and still some of that in that area. So the temperatures have been quite the story into the evening hours coming up and then dropping down by tomorrow morning. And in fact, through the day tomorrow, those will continue to fall off. So it gets colder as we go into the afternoon and especially the early evening hours for your Wednesday. A look at what's just kind of lingering. Mostly some light kind of shower activity or drizzle and fog in there too, reducing visibility in some areas. But keeping in mind as the temperature falls, that's when we get into some of this patchy freezing drizzle. So that's something to watch out for still in these overnight hours and early tomorrow morning. A few areas will pick up some flurries. Mostly we're going to have the cloud cover as we go through the day on Wednesday. That temperature story, interesting as it is, -3 tomorrow afternoon, falling to -6. Kelda.
Thanks, Colette. Well, federal rules around air travel are easing next week, and today Air Canada announced it is relaunching dozens of international routes starting in March. Signs that a recovery is underway. Dahlia Ashry has more.
Last time Elizabeth Arcila traveled to Colombia was 4 years ago. Now she's all packed and ready to go back.
It has been a lot of waiting to do this. We are very excited.
Others already thinking of places to check off their bucket list. What other countries would you want to travel to?
Maybe Europe, a couple of European countries.
Starting next month, Air Canada is relaunching 34 routes to numerous countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. In Toronto, nonstop services will resume to Tel Aviv, Paris, Tokyo, and Amsterdam.
Lineups are picking back up here again at Toronto Pearson International Airport. And soon there will be plenty of more destinations to visit abroad. And some of the travel insurance experts I spoke with are warning people of the ongoing risks while traveling during the pandemic. So if you plan on traveling or going away anytime soon, make sure to plan accordingly.
The big hesitation now is trip cancellation. Will cover you if you get COVID before you're supposed to go away, but not cover you for fear of going to that country. That country closes its borders, as did happen in some countries last year. That will not be covered, and that's a big concern.
This economics professor says while he thinks adding more routes is a good idea, Air Canada may still be facing an uphill battle.
It'll be good for Canadians to have that option,
But I do think we're not going to see the full uptake that, I think Air Canada is hoping for.
Starting next month, travelers will no longer be required a negative PCR test for entry into Canada. A less costly antigen test will be enough. Despite that, Chandra says the country still has very strict testing rules.
That is still actually now it's starting to become one of the strictest in the world. And so it's, that might deter some Canadians, or it might, cause them some worries about, potentially testing positive on a trip and not being able to make their way back.
Travelers who test positive while abroad are still required to wait at least 10 days before re-entering Canada. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. The Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center is calling for emergency action from the TDSB after a group of students performed the Nazi salute. The incident happened last week at Valley Park Middle School. Natalie Collada reports.
A Jewish teacher walked into her classroom last week and was greeted by a number of students giving her the Nazi salute and shouting Heil Hitler.
The organization says it's received nearly daily complaints of anti-Semitism in Toronto schools since the start of the year, and today a call for action.
We're not at all looking for the TDSB to go around punishing students. That's very unlikely to work as a deterrent. What we want is a board-level commitment to taking these kind of issues seriously and to providing the necessary education.
The incident happened last week at Valley Park Middle School, 2 weeks after swastika graffiti was found at the same school. In a letter to parents, the school confirms incidents of graffiti found at the school along with 3 students who performed the Hitler salute in front of classmates, adding we are consulting with TDSB equity advisors and the other central staff to establish new strategies and tools for addressing anti-Semitism.
Whether the kids are getting it from social media or protests they're seeing or gaming, we in educational institutions need to continue what we're doing and do more.
It's the latest in a rash of anti-Semitic occurrences at TDSB schools. Earlier this month, Charles H. Best Middle School said it launched an investigation after students performed Nazi salutes in front of classmates.
We are committed to proactively bringing more Holocaust education into our schools from middle school up.
I have to talk about
the board is partnering with Holocaust educators to make it happen.
My grandmother Miriam, my aunt Aniko were murdered in the gas chambers of Auschwitz-Birkenau when they first arrived. My father was very fortunate to be amongst the first 1,000 Jewish orphans welcomed to our great country, Canada. Sharing his story, sharing his history would help the next generations learn to build a better world. You listen to a witness.
And they hope to. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
You're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline, cloudy and foggy with some light rain tonight, and temperatures even milder than earlier in the day, currently 5 degrees in the city. Let's go back to Colette now, and Colette, still quite mild right now, but colder temperatures will soon be moving in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now we're going to flip-flop in the other direction as we get much colder air that's going to be moving in for midweek. Not only that, but as the temperatures are falling, as we get behind the cold front, then we get into seeing some of that drizzle turning into some freezing drizzle. Not the extended freezing rain that eastern Ontario has been seeing, but still some of that freezing drizzle making for some slippery roadways and reduced visibility, as I was mentioning earlier in the show, with some patchy fog too. Dropping temperatures though, and another system coming in at the end of the week. Boy, we are on the storm track, so every few days another one coming through. That one likely more of a snow event, and getting to that in just a moment, but just looking at some of that light moisture still around and the precipitation mix that we have. Again, as temperatures fall, then we get into the freezing drizzle, and tomorrow there'll be some areas that'll pick up some squalls and that activity with some of those flurries. Not so likely that we'll see much of that into the city, but about a 30% chance to see some flurries. A lot of cloud cover coming in there too. And then as we roll ahead and kind of see where we're going, Thursday during the day, it's not an issue. It's towards the evening, overnight especially, and into Friday morning. So Friday morning's commute could be a tricky one. Still watching the tracking of this in terms of the amounts. Right now, there is that potential for 5 to 10 centimeters. If it pushes just a little further south, which at times some of the models have been wanting to do with it, I know it's still a few days out. We're talking about Thursday night, Friday, but then we could see less. So keeping an eye on that. A look at what's happening with those temperatures through the overnight period, and then tomorrow we may gain a little bit, but it's going to be hard with that breeze that you're going to be having from west to northwest. That wind strong at times through the overnight hours as the cold front goes through, and there you are tomorrow. Early afternoon, those are the temperatures, and then they'll be sliding as we get into the afternoon hours, coming down to -6, continuing to fall from there, so -12 by the time we're to Thursday morning. Thursday, a much cooler day, and then watching out for that system may impact us at the end of the week, Hilda.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, two brothers from Mississauga will soon be making their professional boxing debut. Talia Ricci sat down with the Sandus ahead of their February 26th match in Mexico City.
It's huge because growing up and looking at the way that we do, we haven't really seen a big Punjabi fighter ever in history. So I feel like we have that platform.
So it's our professional debut, so it means a lot because we started boxing at 10 years old. We started taking the sport very serious about maybe 4 years into it. This is what we've been training for, you know, all those runs, 3 a.m., 10 kilometers in the snow. So it kind of all led up to this.
What is it that you love about boxing?
It's more of a mindset than anything being a fighter, I feel like. And, you know, boxing showed us that, you know, sometimes you get knocked down and it's okay, even in, you know, the regular world.
The discipline, it teaches you discipline and structure, especially starting at a young age. It teaches you how to fight, and then not only like in, you know, just fitness, but it translates to every part of your life. Seeing that there's the opportunity that we could be those two guys from the Punjabi community to reach like superstardom, that's just going to make us work extra hard.
If you set small goals and you stay focused and you stay consistent and you work hard and you put in your pain and your sweat into this sport or into anything, it's very possible, and the opportunities are here for you to grow.
And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.